Let's do it.
Yeah. No. I think we should. I think. Well, finger crossed. But I think we should be able to manage.
Hello and welcome to FPL IQ. We are here today and we're going to be answering some questions like Salah, sell or hold, what to do with a problem like Pedro, and do we stick or twist with those United assets, as well as looking at some interesting things we might have picked up in the stats or the eye test this week. Key game week matchups which have important matches but also ones that are specific to FPL people you might want to bring in, and then we'll be finishing off with our 4-week player picks on who to bring in for potentially the next 4 game weeks. Of course, again, I'm joined by 2 of the 3 people in FPL IQ, and with Tien, FPL Planner, and Lucian, Teacher FPL. Tien, how are you doing? Feeling good for game week 3?
Not so much, but I'm feeling good myself. Yeah, I'm still debating what I want to do for my 2 transfers, and I still have no idea as of now. So hopefully, after this chat today, you guys will help me out, maybe with some ideas.
Well, I wouldn't know about that. If anything, we're going to do the opposite, but we'll see. And Lucian, Teacher FPL, how are you feeling for game week 3?
Allow me to tell you the story of the boy who flew too close to the sun and did not buy Estupinian as a result. Well, you know how it goes. When you invest in differentials, right? There will be weeks where you own Serge Aurier and your rank jumps from 4.5 million down to 1.5 million, and then Estupinian brings you back down to earth and he drags you all the way back to 5 million plus rank. That's how it goes. That's how
I
it
had
goes.
a dismal game week. I ended up with like 38 points. I literally had 2 people do something in my entire team, and I'm like you. I don't have a Estupinian, and that was the. And Matoma is in my team, and he did such a good goal. Fair play to Brighton on Twitter, because they must have some knowledge about FPL because they were tweeting, oh, the Matoma goal was great, but look at the beautiful assist. And it's just a Stupinian, giving a 2-yard pass on the halfway line before Matoma goes and takes everyone on and scores a goal. So fair play to the banter. We can definitely take that. But I think it was a tough game week for a lot of people, unless you sat there with a Stupinian and Mbuemo. Look, he scored 3 goals, 2 of them are penalties. If he keeps that up, he'll score 40 plus goals a season. So we'll have to wait on that. But we'll go straight into then the Salah question. I think now I was the only one in our group. So Ryan's not here today. You two are here. I was the only one who went Salahless at the start of the season because I felt it could be funds better spent elsewhere. It turns out that actually, in hindsight, if you would have picked the best enablers to go with him, the best 6.5s, you guys would have been fine. But there is a big, big question now over this man because I've still got like 2 million in my bank and I can still make plenty of moves. It feels as though the people who have Salah, like you two in your sides, funds are a lot tighter. And with Pedro being benched in game week 2, now we are going to talk about Pedro, but there is news from the other day that it looks like Cisco is out injured, so Pedro's probably a hold, but a shaky hold. So with funds tight, if you are a Salah owner like you guys are, do you think now is the time to sell? So you guys must have been in mind the fact, not just Salah's a great asset, but also the fact that you wanted to captain him in game week 2, which was a fair point. But is it now time to potentially let go of the Egyptian king, or do you still have some faith in him? So, Tian, we'll start with you because it's great because you two both have Salah. So this is not just a loaded question where we're all sat here without Salah and, we can't show you what we would do because it's not our team. You two literally have Salah and you literally have to answer this question. And you've got 2 transfers because you've rolled it. So, Lucian, Salah, what are you thinking about him? What do you want to do?
Oh, I thought we were going with Tian first.
I was,
because
but I mixed it up. I started with him with the introduction. I thought, you know what? I'm gonna switch it. Keep you on your
spice
toes.
it up. Why not?
Well, I think first thing I need to say is that when we talked about our initial drafts, I own Salah, yes, and I intentionally made a plan to swap Luke Shaw out for Chilwell after game week 1. That was very deliberate, very intentional, because I did not want to own Salah against Chilwell. So I got him early. I got the price rise. Thank you, Zvalto, for recognizing the haircut. And um, well, the problem now is not with Salah because that penalty, fine, it got saved, it got saved. I'm more concerned about why you mentioned funds were tight, Rob. And honestly speaking, I have to say that this bit me back in the ass so bad because I reacted really late to news that Wolves manager got sacked. And that was what triggered me to get Luke Shaw. Otherwise, I did not have him for most of preseason. It triggered me to somehow scrimmage funds to get Marcus Rashford. That was also a really bad move. And for me, it was not about affording Salah. It was actually about affording Salah and Marcus Rashford and 2 Arsenal midfielders. That really killed my prospects. So honestly, I suffered this week only because I did not have a 6.5 million enabler. I tried to put money together and I managed to get Kai Havertz, who I have promptly sold without a shadow of a doubt. But yes, Salah is a definite hold only because there are greater fires out there. Because I mean, you look at what everyone's stressing out over now, right? Gabriel, John Stones, Reece James, and now a new one in Marcus Rashford. Because we really cannot say when Hoyland will start. So even though there are rumors about him getting his debut this weekend against Nottingham Forest, I don't think he will start from the get-go. So it remains to be seen. And I just feel that, keep it simple, replace all your injured players, sell Marcus Rashford, and deal with it from there. Deal with it from there.
Tien, what are you thinking? You've got 2 moves to make. Is Salah in your plans to be leaving, or is he firmly a hold?
I wouldn't say firmly a hold. I wouldn't be that strong. I I think as we discussed, in our pre-game week 1 preview, right? We all had reason for going with Salah, and we went with the plan, holding him for at least 2 weeks, captaining him against Bournemouth at home. It didn't turn out to be like, as great as we were hoping for, but that's fine. It is what it is. We can only plan so much. And my plan was to sell him if the time was right, and hold him if the time wasn't right to sell. Now, obviously, we all kind of suffered the same thing. So Lucian suffered the sort of going for Luke Shaw because of the Wolves fixture. I kind of went from my plan to have like Watkins to start with the sort of prospect of downgrading him down to Jackson without the need to sell Salah. But then I switched it to Foden last minute. Now it didn't look very very good. I had before game week 2, but now it's looking great because it looks like everyone is trying to get to Foden. So I'm glad that I have Foden. But then obviously if I do want Jackson, for example, then I do need to sell Salah, which I don't mind at all. The problem is that was firmly in the plan, but as of now, I have no idea which midfielder I want. So I've got Foden, I've got Mbomo. Those are the two midfielders that I think would be the most sensible plays to go from Salah, and then that would enable the fund to upgrade either Pedro or the 4.5 forward that I have to Jackson if I want to. But because I don't know which midfielder I want, I don't know, Madison is a good one, but then he might be injured. Who else we got? Richarlison looks really bad.
Matoma, March.
Mitoma, March, I don't want to go there because I think the time to buy them was 2 weeks ago. It's probably a bit too late now. I don't really fancy Martinelli as a double up, for Arsenal. And Sterling is something that somewhat that I'm looking at, but it's just a little bit early. So for that reason, I'm holding Salah just because I want to buy time.
Odegaard?
I don't. I'm not keen on Odegaard because I'm keeping Saka, and I think that's enough.
I'd
Just
say is on
one
sale
for
now.
now. So yeah. So I'm willing to hold and buy time and wait for more info. I might sell him next week or the after, but I don't mind. I don't mind keeping him at all because as Lucian said, he's not a fire. He's not a fire that you have to fix, and therefore I'm holding. But if anyone who doesn't have Foden, for example, double move from Salah and any cheap forward to a Foden and a Jackson or an Alvarez is a no-brainer in my opinion.
Can I add a Tian's point? Because I do have some
Yep.
examples here. If you want to combine Salah with a 5.5 million midfielder or a striker, that affords you 18 million, right? And that's basically Foden and Isak, or Foden and Luis Diaz if you're worried about jumping off Liverpool, because Luis Diaz looked fantastic playing the number 9 when the ball's on the right side. If you have Salah and 4.5, if you're trying to replace Chukwuemeka or Archer for whatever reason, then you can go down to Bruno Fernandes, and then that allows you like an Odegaard or Diogo Jota as a more premium version of Liverpool's assets. So the combinations are there. I think it's just that in Tien's case, he's already very settled with his midfielders anyway. So that's all.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think we're just sticking to the guns we had in pre-season. You guys are looking to hold if you've got other fires like a Gabriel-shaped issue or a Stones issue.
Yeah.
We
Shall we
lost
go on?
Rob.
You are?
Oh, damn. All right. So, Tien, right. Didn't realize he was just staring into space.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was just bored of us. Okay. Ramiraki's actually mentioned hello wildcarders. Would you recommend wildcarding to anybody at all?
So maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago, my early season, like game week 1 was a mess. Game week 2, I make some panic moves and it was a mess. And so I wildcarded in game week 3. And I think that was the year where Bamford was the 5.5 million forward that just turned out to be one of the best asset in that year, right? So I wildcarded in week 3. I loaded up with Bamford and some other good picks that I managed to
Watkins was
get, and
5.5 as well.
yeah, and it's basically like completely turned the season around. So I'm not against early wildcard at all. Like if your team needs a wildcard, just wildcard. I mean, there's no rule book in FPL. I mean, you would like to think there's rule book, but your team is specific, right? It's team dependent. You play to your team, and I
I've
think
heard,
wildcard now is
well,
perfectly fine.
actually, Tian, I've heard the rule of thumb is 8 transfers. If you can make 8 net positive transfers, then that's the signal to wildcard. Would you agree with that? 8
I
out of
I would
15?
say I would say if you are making 5 or 6 transfers, that's enough to trigger the wild card, really. I mean, if because a lot of the time you could say that, oh yeah, I could get away with not making some of the transfers, but then you end up with like a second choice pick, for example, from a team, and the wild card will strengthen that a lot, and you can't estimate how much of an improvement just going from like a Harvard, in your example, to an Odegaard or Saka, right? And because if you are having 4, 5, or 6 other fires in the team, the wild card or not is an opportunity for you to improve some of the other sort of borderline areas as well. So I don't mind it at all. I mean, obviously in my case, my team is reasonably well set up, so I'm not gonna need it anytime soon. But for anyone that look at the team and say, yeah, it's a mess. I really want to make 5, 6, or 7 transfers to fix it. We might as well just wild card.
It's so strange
Hi, Rob.
because I've seen lots of I've seen people online telling people they can't wildcard or they shouldn't wildcard, but it is completely team specific. Like, or if
Exactly.
you just feel like you've seen enough in the first 2 weeks and you're going for it, I would just say, like you say, if you're going up to like a -16 or you're making enough transfers in your first 11, then go for it. I mean, if you're just doing it to do like 1 or 2 changes to your first 11 and your subs bench, then people would argue that you probably should save it. But certainly for this, and for me, I think you guys are holding faith in Salah, and if you weren't set up how you wanted to be, if I had Salah, then it would be a wildcard time because that is where you would use that 12.5 million and spread it throughout your team. Right? If you've not got Salah, then I'm not too sure where else you're going to go, unless you've been really unlucky and you sat there with Gabriel, Stones, or Baldock, all the injured sort of players. But for me, I didn't start the season with him, and I'm not looking to bring him in because Salah's fixtures are still not quite right. Yeah, he had Bournemouth, but he's got what is he? He's got Newcastle this weekend. Then they've got Villa, Wolves, which might be an easy fixture. Sorry, Lucian. West Ham, but then they've got Spurs and Brighton. We always look at the first 8, right? And it's just not enough. Too much funds for a player that you're not even going to captain. Just doesn't feel like it's right. But we're going to go on to Pedro now. This discussion is going to be a little bit of a tweak. So originally, when we set the agenda, he'd been benched for game week 2. We know he's 5.5 million. Now, I'm going to say it right now. There are so many people that came out and said, oh, we told you he wasn't nailed. He wasn't going to always play. It's like, but come on, right? For me, it was a big shock in game week 2 to see him start, record signing, missed a sitter, scored a penalty, played most of the game. I honestly thought he was going to start game week 2. I did not think they were going to drop him exactly in the second game week. I never thought he was going to play every single game. I thought he would at least get the first 2 or 3. So when people come out in hindsight and say, oh, we told you he wasn't nailed, you wouldn't have guessed he would have been dropped for the second game week. In fact, is it Jump the Wave on Twitter with all the people that predict all the teams? Like, he was predicted to start. I don't think that is crazy to say. But, and Cisco looks like he's got an injury and will be out for a while. That still doesn't make Pedro definite to start because there's lots of other people that can come in. So the plans for Pedro, what to do about this guy. Now, I see a lot of people. We all have Haaland, right? I don't know if there's anyone in the chat or anyone of us who don't have Haaland, right? I don't know anyone who doesn't have him, especially now there's no Kane to sort of challenge for that forward position. And people aren't interested in Salah, so everyone's got Haaland, right? But who is his strike partner? A lot of people are taking this guy here, Pedro, and they're looking to move him to Jackson or Wissa or Watkins. So what? We've all got Pedro, right? Yeah?
Yes.
Not anymore.
Not it, right.
Anymore.
So we'll come to you in a minute then, Lucian. So I've still got Pedro. I've already made my move. He's on my bench. He's a very, very good person to have on my bench. If he starts the game week and gets loads of points, all right, so be it. But he's not in my first 11. He's 5.5. He's worth it to just sit there until I've got a transfer to spare to take him out. People have him in their starting 11, and they're looking to change him to another forward. Would you hold him? Or would you plan to sell him or just bench him? So Tien, we'll come to you because Lucian, you've already made this decision. So Tien, what are your plans on Pedro?
Yes, I think you made a good point earlier. Like it's 2 game weeks in, right? There's still a lot of things we don't know. Like those people that come out and say, oh yep, now we know everything and we've seen enough. I mean, you've seen a lot, but there's still a lot that we don't know. So pre-game week 1, we thought Pedro was quite nailed, and on pen, game week 1 came, it's like, yep, spot on. He was nailed starting, and he was on pen. And then everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people rush in to buy him. He was among the top transfer in players for game week 2. And then suddenly, obviously, De Zerbi come out and pulled it straight back down to earth, surprisingly to a lot of us, which that confirms some suspicion that we kind of knew that that there's strong competition up front for Brighton. So it wasn't a total surprise, but it was somewhat a surprise. And yeah, so with Enciso out, yeah, I would like to think that his chance of starting is bigger, but there's no guarantee. So for me, he's a 5.5 million forward. Like what do you expect? I mean, you can't expect him to start every game and score every game. So if he failed to return or he failed to start, well, that was to be expected because he's only 5.5, and I think he's a very good third bench, a third forward option as well, if you can set up that way. So for me at the moment, my plan is just to hold him because we'll see what happens. Like I strongly suspect that he will start with Enciso out. Home against West Ham is a very good fixture. So if he starts, he's gonna be very likely to be involved in the goal. So so I'm happy to hold and I'm happy to see what happens because my plan wasn't to upgrade him to another forward. My plan to convert it into some sort of a 3-4-3 formation, so he can be my third forward, and then we can start kind of seeing how when European competitions come in and what's going to happen with can we predict their benching patterns and all that sort of things, then we can either play him or bench him accordingly. I have no rush to sell him, or I don't want to be forced to sell him.
Is he in your first 11 or on your bench?
He's currently in my first 11, and I'm happy with that.
So Lucian, you have sold him. He's gone. Where is he gone?
Well, I usually sell players like these if I see opportunity. And the opportunity is there. We'll talk about it in our player picks later, but there is a team that is about to have a run of 3 home games in the next 4 without European competition with 2 strikers that are on form. I mean, I already have Haaland and Jackson. So if I kept Pedro, I'd have to sell him for someone with much, much more potential. And yeah, if I see it, I'm definitely gonna go for it. Um I would have held Joao Pedro. I would have benched him if Chukwuemeka did not get injured for me. So I would say that this Joao Pedro replacement was also partially forced because yeah, I would have happily played Chukwuemeka as my 11th attacker. Um yeah, yeah, I would say so. So yes, I've definitely replaced him, and honestly, there are a lot of candidates, but I've definitely gone for Wisa, the more shrewd pick here, because I too subscribe in your conclusion that Mbeumo just had two penalties. But frankly, if Mbeumo were priced 6.5, and I could go from my injured Chukwuemeka to Mbeumo, I would have picked both up without thinking at all. But that's where I'm at. Joao Pedro to Joan Wisa.
So that Luke Shaw 5.5 million and is coming back to haunt you again, is it?
Well, I don't know. I
Oh,
mean, I had that queued up in game week 1, and I did it without thinking. I got the Luke Shaw clean sheet. I'm like, okay, bye, and Chilwell came in. It's just a shame that Chilwell didn't get anything against West Ham. So no regrets because Chilwell's in there for the medium term. Yeah, so Chilwell's sitting there in my team now. But that's about it.
yeah. So for me, for Pedro, is he probably going to start this weekend? Yes. But are you going to have doubts every single game week? Yes. And for me, if he's on my bench, I'm not too bothered because he's only going to come in if I really need him. And he is going to get minutes. I can't see a 90-minute game where he starts on the bench and doesn't come on at all because I just think he will. They've got the depth. They can bring him on if they're behind. They can bring him off if they're winning, like they were against Wolves. I think he'll still get minutes. So he's fine if he's on your bench. But if I'm at Tien and he's sat there in my starting 11, and he's just got 0 points because he came on and got booked, and I could find a way to get up to a Wisa or a Jackson or a Watkins, then I probably would make that move. I wouldn't be sat there with him. Especially if I've already got another Brighton player in Matoma, or if you sat there with March. The double up isn't necessary. Yes, I've got West Ham now, but if you are looking forward, this is now the sort of the trilogy of games Brighton had at the start of the season were what opened everyone's eyes a lot to them. But they're going to move on to Newcastle United, Bournemouth, Villa, and Liverpool, and City is the next run. So yeah, I would just, if he's in my 11 and I could move and I didn't have any other fires or anything, then I probably would make that move. Speaking again,
Can I just add quickly something? You actually made a very good point about if you have Mitoma in your team, then of course that's make your life a lot easier. Because the way I see it, that Brighton West Ham fixtures is gonna have a lot of goals, right? And if I don't have Pedro, I don't have Mitoma myself. If I don't have Pedro, if I sell him or if I bench him, I literally have no Brighton attack cover at all, which I think is a bigger risk than starting him and hoping that he's starting, which I think is not a good, it's not a bad, it's not a bad guess at all. Given that the biggest threat is Enciso, who is currently out.
You put
of
some
course,
respect on Lallana's name.
Well, I mean, there's always competition there, but it's not like Pedro has played badly or anything, right? It's
mentally.
So yeah,
mentally was what De Zerbi
yeah,
said.
I'm willing to take that risk, and if Brighton is gonna score and he plays, then he's probably gonna be involved.
All right, so we'll go on to the last question that's been hitting a lot of people this week. A lot of people started with these two gentlemen, Rashford and Bruno. I sold Bruno before game week 2 for Diaby because they had Everton, which they did great, and he did nothing. And they've got Burnley this weekend. I've still got Rashford. Look, we know the problem that I'm going to talk a little bit about Manchester United when we get into the interesting facts and finds, but just to keep it short and simple, if I had these two for this game against Nottingham Forest, I wouldn't sell them. Afterwards, I would sell them. That's my simple stance on these. I sold Bruno because I knew if I got to this game week and I'm looking at Nottingham Forest as a home fixture on my screen, I still would have had them for another 2 game weeks. So I sold Bruno before Spurs because I saw the opportunity in Diaby, because he's basically a second striker with Watkins. So I knew if I would have held up until game week 3, I would have had both of them going into game week minimum 5. Because if Rashford has another stinker or Man United are still looking wrong, even if he's pushed out to the wing, I can go forward and I can also sell Rashford. And then I won't have any Manchester United for is it Arsenal and Brighton, the 2 fixtures after Forest? So that's simple as it is. If I'm sat there with 1 or 2 Manchester United players against Nottingham Forest at home, I wouldn't be selling them. But after that, yeah, for sure. Lucian, your thoughts on Manchester United, sell or hold?
Well, I'm gonna keep it simple. Keep Bruno Fernandes, sell Marcus Rashford. Sorry, Rob.
I
It's
did
my
it before
take
Spurs.
because
I did it before Spurs. Let's be fair. Like I know Bruno did
yeah,
a lot better, but I would agree with that. Sorry, go on. Yep, I agree.
no, like the simple analogy here is that Man United and Chelsea are both in the same situation. They're suffering from a combinations of injuries and one-dimensional play, and they've just been forced to shift and shift and shift. So we just have to wait and see how they perform against Forest. But I'd happily sell Marcus Rashford. You can put a good fixture in front of Marcus Rashford, but everything has been encapsulated by that huge header he missed. On the plate, Rabona assist. What more do you want? Poof! Go straight up. That's it. It's done.
Bruno missed his header, then Rashford missed from the Rabona, right? So, but we'll touch a little bit about United in the finals. I have so Tien, thoughts Manchester United, the double act here.
I mean, just putting my Man United supporter hat aside, I think it's mad to sell either of them ahead of Northern Forest at home. Like, yes, they look quite sluggish in the last 2 games, but if leave that aside, they, Bruno Fernandes and Rashford, they had big chances. Fernandes had 2.12 non-penalties xGI, and arguably, he could have got 2 pens as well. So, if he scored one of those big chances that he missed, or if he got 1 pen and he scored, I don't think we'll be even talking about it right now. It wouldn't be in a conversation at all. Like
It's
he will
why I
be
said keep
a
Bruno.
strong keep.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah.
even Rashford, I know that sometimes he would turn into his former self, sort of like head down and just run with no sort of direction or clear strategy on what he does. But then it could just be a flick, a switch of the last season, for example, the first 2 games, he looked very poor, and then from game week 3 on, well, guess what? The fixtures were favorable, and then he just turned the switch on, and guess what? He turned into a scoring machine. So the things that we know what he's capable of, we know what both of them are capable of. And yes, we have a slow start. So United have a slow start, but I would guess that Forest at home is a good fixture for a turnaround. Now Mount is out as well, and that might actually be important
A good
because
thing.
that might be a good thing. That might release Bruno to be more attacking. And I'm not sure. I might guess that Martial might have a start as well. I don't think Højlund would be fit enough to start. So if Martial start up front, Rashford is playing on the left, that might be better for him as well. So yeah, just keep it short. I think it's mad to sell them right now. Like, next week is fine. I mean, regardless of what they do this week, if you are thinking about selling them next week, I think it's perfectly fine to sell next week, but not this week.
Yeah. So we'll go on to the interesting facts and finds. So I've got 2, and the first one, because it links to Manchester United, what we're talking about now. So despite lacking in midfield and having a style of play sort of crisis that they're having right now with trying to play with 2 8s and it not quite working, United are still second for chances created, 5th for total attempts, and 3rd for most attempts inside the box. That for me, considering how we've said about how isolated the attack has been and how poor they've looked the first 2 game weeks, they're like top 3 for chances. And individually, Bruno had the most attempts of any midfielder in game week 2. Casemiro was joint second And Bruno was the most underachieving player in terms of like XGI for Game Week 2. So it's so strange that this is for me an example of when you sort of you have your eye test and you look at the data and you just think they don't feel like it adds up, but they are creating chances. They're just not putting them away. If it all feels like it boils down to Bruno. It all comes down to Bruno. They've got one of the best 10s in the world. And I always feel like in the first couple of weeks, I've just always been on Casemiro's back. But I think it was on Sky Sports, that out of all defensive midfielders in the Premier League, he's been taken on the most. I think it was 6 times. In terms of your recognised midfielder, they're not putting Salah on that list, right? They're putting like, Declan Rice, people like that. Yeah, he's joint second for attempts. And that's Casemiro. There is a problem with them right now. But just like you said, Tien, like Rashford can go on a run. If something clicks in this side, it'll click. And Mount could be the catalyst. In the bad way for Mount, the fact that he's not going to play. If Eriksen's there, it's probably going to be similar to what it was last season, where United still didn't score that many goals. But if they maybe just, I don't think they're going to do it. They won't start McTominay. Ten Hag feels stubborn and he'll stick with this plan. He'll put Eriksen in and he'll stick with the 2-8s. But when Mount's there, he gets forward more than Bruno. He makes those runs. Eriksen hasn't got the legs Bruno has. So I do feel as though, because they played together last season, it will be Bruno getting back into that advanced position rather than Mount. So that is just another reason why, if I had both of these players still, I would keep them both for this fixture. But if I only had one of them, I would still keep with it for this game. But if I still had both of them, yes, I would probably sell Rashford ahead of Bruno, because stat-wise, he's right at the top. And it just feels like he's going to score or create something. But this will be the fixture, I think, where we really see what United are going to do, because if it's another situation where that midfield 3 is isolated from the attack, Casemiro's getting overrun because he's been asked to do too much as the only holding midfield player who doesn't have the speed, the horizontal speed to cover players going past him, it's going to be a mass sale for one or both of them. But the final point I'll say is they are, in terms of FPL managers, the boring part, Lucien said earlier about you see an advantage and you try and take it, but effective ownership, it's nothing that we like to talk about, but Rashford is 43% owned, which is high. So if you're dead set on selling him, you've got to feel like you are definitely getting the advantage somewhere. Not just selling him because you're sick and tired of having Rashford and Bruno not perform, because that comes into like the meta play of, is there someone who you absolutely believe can replace Rashford? If there is, make the move. But if not, and Rashford does go on that run, which he's more than capable of, you are really going to take a hit in your rank, because he's almost half the game owns Rashford. So,
yes. One last
yeah,
point.
Yeah, go on.
Right here. Okay, so everyone's predicting the Forest game to be the one that turns United's fortunes around, right? And Tien is exactly right. United suffered heavy losses at the start of last season. Guess which fixture turned them around to go on their run?
I'm going to guess Nottingham Forest.
Tien, do you remember? United fan?
Can't remember exactly, but it was a very easy one.
Yeah, easy, all right. 2-1 at home to
Wolves.
Liverpool.
Oh,
2-1
Liverpool.
at
That was
home
going to be
to
yours.
Liverpool. That started the
Gameweek
run.
3.
Yes,
Really?
and that started a run for Bruno Fernandes to score, and Rashford did not come into the picture until they won 3-1 against Arsenal. So, Ten Hag relies on character building. If it's going to be a game that turns their fortunes around, it's going to be winning a difficult game that they don't deserve to win. That's why I say keep Bruno Fernandes, because as the captain, he has the most character in that side right now.
And Arsenal is game week 4. So if they don't do it against Nottingham Forest, and you're having the suggestion that they step up for the bigger games, it's Arsenal next. So even if they don't do it against Nottingham Forest, maybe away at Arsenal is when The last one that I pointed out, so it connects back to the Pedro point that we talked about earlier. We've talked about the likes of Risa, but if you really don't have the funds, I'm going to put big man Edward up on the pedestal here. I have a little bit of a soft spot for Crystal Palace because I've started the season with 3 of them. Never thought I would get to that, but I've still got 3 of them. And Edward is joint top forward for total attempts with Risa, 10 attempts. He's clear for attempts inside the box with 10. He's had the most big chances with 3, and the most headed goal attempts with 4. And with Mateta looking likely to leave, it looks as though that central striker position for here is his, because even if Elise comes back, Elise is a wide player that'll probably come in for IU or Schlupp, depending on whatever they're feeling. So if you really don't have any funds, and Crystal Palace have Brentford this week, and you've got anyone you can rotate, he's 5.5 million, and he's actually the top in terms of stats for the key ones that you're kind of looking at. So they're the 2 ones. Oh, and he's also one of the very, very, very few forwards to have played every minute of the season so far, all 180 of them. So there you go. And yeah, that's the interesting finds I've had. So Lucian, we'll go to you. What are your finds of the week?
Okay, I'm not gonna ramble because I think I've already had my soapbox earlier. So I'm gonna make this really succinct and hopefully not too much time. So we are making headway into the start of the season now. Whoo, that is a big bottle. Now, and we are basically going to approach the end of the international transfer deadline in game week 4. Between game weeks 1 and 4, we have to recognize that all teams in the Premier League will go through transition. And throughout the last 2 game weeks, I've basically spotted, right, teams across the league are going through different levels of transition. And that is what we as FPL managers have to take advantage of for game weeks 3 and 4 before the deadline shuts, before we look at our strategy and the next 8 weeks again. So a very straightforward one would be Man City and Arsenal game weeks 1 and 2. Their transition has been about how to win games with minimal effort. Take the lead, sit on it, take advantage of whatever you can, but be it Haaland, Saka, penalties. They've just become more pragmatic. Whereas if you looked at teams at the bottom, right, they're adjusting to new signings. They're adjusting to losing a lot of signings, right? The 3 promoted sides have bought a lot of players, and so some games they will look good, and some games they will still retain their usual flaws. But 2 teams in particular to bully right now are Everton and Wolves because they have suffered a lot of outgoings. Well, not Everton so much, but I think losing DCL and trying to shoehorn him back in is something that Everton will struggle with until DCL has finally retired. Then you have teams that are slightly trickier, teams in mid-table, such as Crystal Palace, Fulham, West Ham, Forest, Chelsea, Brentford. These teams permanently stuck in mid-table are about deciding who their talismans are. In some cases, such as Brentford, Forest, and Chelsea, they're trying to center their influence onto one player. It's why we cannot look past Nico Jackson and Ben Chilwell. It's why we can't look past Mbomo and Wisa. It's why we can't leave Forest without talking about Morgan Gibbs-White. Whereas for certain teams like Palace, Fulham, and West Ham, they don't have a talisman because Mitrovic has gone, Zaha has left. Well, West Ham never really had a talisman in the first place, but that's how they roll. That's how they roll. And again, we take advantage of that, right? We just perceive their dangers either concentrated on certain players or just spread out among a very informed attack. Now, lastly, sides that are transitioning into Europe, the ones that are traditionally undervalued. Spurs, Liverpool, Brighton, Newcastle, Man United, Aston Villa. Sides that can traditionally challenge for Europe. These sides, right, are either about consolidating their plan A, such as what Ten Hag, Spurs, and Liverpool are trying to do, or they are trying to take their squad and basically drive into a new dimension. You look at Newcastle's left wing bursting into life against Villa. You look at Aston Villa's 4-2-2-2 now actually having a second striker next to Watkins, as you've mentioned earlier. Things like these are competitive advantage that may or may not be short term, and that's how we play. So for game week 3, we are basically looking at all these teams. Hopefully, the transcript will be there later to summarize. Look at how each team is transitioning and then decide based on what I've mentioned earlier, as to whether they will become better based on the transition or whether they are in danger of becoming worse, such as what's happening to my Wolves team. And that's what I found across 2 game weeks.
Yeah, great. I think the only thing I would disagree with would be Palace and West Ham talisman. I would still argue Bowen is West Ham's, and I would argue Edsey is Crystal Palace's talisman. But it's still early, I think, for Edsey, especially when Elise is back. They could maybe share the points, but I think Bowen is clear for West Ham. But I think as well for wildcard, as you mentioned about Europe, I think for people who are wildcarded now, because there was some in the chat earlier, keep Europe in your mind, because obviously we're not wildcarded and we're not thinking about Europe yet, but definitely keep one eye on European fixtures. That's another issue with wildcarding too early, is you don't know the effects on Europe. So Brighton, they've never been there before. So a lot of us have got 2 or 3 Brighton players. We have no idea if they're going to be able to be playing 3 games a week consistently, or we don't know if they're going to rest people in Europe or rest people in the Premier League, or a little bit of both. That is going to be a bit of a minefield that we are yet to enjoy. I'll say enjoy very loosely. Tien, what are your finds for the game week?
Yes, I just want to keep it very short and sweet. So talking about Man City and their pragmatic approach to game, and I think if you look at the Newcastle game, you would have thought, oh, they just only won 1-0, right? But if you look a little bit deeper, they could have got a lot more goals, and I was so surprised how good Foden was in that game. Like playing in the number 10 role, he basically give us the prime KDB vibes, in my opinion. Like he would look so good on the ball, and he even added an additional dimension that KDB didn't have. Is that sort of like that acceleration on the ball? Like he was so fast in sort of make that quick turn. And yeah, he created 7 chances, which was first for game week 2. 3 goal attempts, 2 shots in the box, and the non-penalty XGI of 0.77. So as a result of that, he clocked up 23 baseline bonus of BPS points, which is ranked second amongst all midfielders. And that explained why he got all 3 bonus points with that single assist that he got, which is something that we saw happening so often with KDB in his prime as well. And we often call these assists 6-point assists, because how often do you get someone who get 3 bonus with a single assist? Well, we had that with KDB, and I think we might have it with Foden if he keep playing the same role. And so I'm guessing, we would find a bit better to say this year we feel here.
A bold
I'm glad I have
claim.
him.
Oh yeah, I would be massively happy to be having Phil Foden with this running now. I really wanted Alvarez. I just don't see the point in a hit, and my bench would end up being really too good. But yeah, if you're sat there with Haaland plus another City attacker like Alvarez or Foden, I think they're the 2 main ones. I think they would be. You'd be looking at this weekend, licking your lips. I mean, I've watched both 90 minutes of Sheffield United, and I can't see anything but an absolute utter destruction. I just can't. There's nothing that's going to stop them. The only problem is going to be Man City themselves, because, like you said, game management and just sticking them in second gear, if that, because they'll go 3-0 up and then they'll just pass around the back for the rest of the game, and people are just going to fall asleep watching how easy it is for Man City in this fixture. But we'll see. I mean, I'm hoping for that because I've got a Manchester City defender. But anyway, we'll move on then to the team matchup. So there's 3 fixtures we're going to be looking at this game week. We don't look at all of them because some of them are not important in terms of FPL, or some of them are a little bit obvious. So, for example, we're not going to spend an in-depth time looking at Man City against Sheffield United because you know the players that are good. You have an idea how the game's going to go. You know what's going to get exploited or what's going to be strong or weak. So we pick games that have FPL picks or ones that we might say avoid because of certain strengths and weaknesses of these teams. And the first fixture we are going to be looking at is Chelsea and Luton. We always start these matchups with Lucien because this is generally his area of expertise, and I'll come in with my thoughts, and then Tien will clear up with a lovely conclusion. So Chelsea, Luton, big game, lots of eyes, FPL eyes on this because people are starting to bring Jackson in. I've started since game week 1 with Jackson. A lot of us have Chilwell. Some of us are now with this run for Chelsea looking for a third player. We talked about Enzo released the beast for 5 million. He's on penalties as well. He was on penalties, which he might not be now. But people are looking at Sterling, who I thought was absolutely fantastic against West Ham United in that first half. So, Lucien, what are your thoughts then in the matchup? Chelsea, Luton.
Well, you've put half the words in my mouth, Rob. Yes, the conversation has revolved around Chilwell and Jackson for a very long time. But what we do not see under the hood, at least for Chelsea, is that, yeah, they are trying to transition from their midfield, trying to release the beast, as we say. Now, against Liverpool, Enzo did really well down the right side because Reece James and Jackson had a really good partnership. Sorry, Reece James and Sterling had a really good partnership down the right side in order to bring Enzo forward. But against, I forgot, in game week 2, Chelsea basically went down the left and Chukwuemeka actually started. This was again partially due to Reece James's injury, but it was also partially because Raheem Sterling himself moved to the left. And I think the irony here is that Sterling from the left actually managed to unleash his trademark T-Rex dribbling that allowed him to win that penalty. So a lot of it, in some sense, sees Raheem Sterling as either the instigator or the catalyst of Chelsea's change. And that's why Sterling looks good and that's why he's part of the discussion. But against Luton here, the unfortunate thing is that we only have one game week's worth of data. And the consensus right now is that Luton are, number one, unnecessarily aggressive. And number two, just their lack of quality is just showing the lack of experience in the Premier League and the fact that not to say that they can't deal with basic tasks such as dealing with aerial headers and such, but they will come up short against teams that actually possess aerial dominance, against acceleration, against elite level talent such as Chelsea. So it's just a matter of where you boys will think the weaknesses of Luton's will show against Chelsea, because Brighton took advantage of Luton's right side, pummeled it again and again and again and again and again and again until they were 4-0 up. So that's where we begin.
And they've got, just with Luton, because they've not had a game week 2, so they've only had one game, but you're right, littered with inexperience and mistakes. And for me, it just feels as like when Jackson gets that first goal, I think the rest are going to come. And if there's a fixture he's going to get goals in, it's going to be this one. So when there's a lot of people looking at Pedro and they're going to hold him because he's got West Ham, that's fine. But people, if you are going to move off Pedro, I know we don't just look at points. Yes, he's got 2 points total, 1 point in game week 1, 1 point in game week 2. But that doesn't tell the story. And the first half, Chelsea, for me, were excellent. They carried on from where they left the Liverpool game. The first sort of 30 minutes against Liverpool, they were way off. Liverpool looked like they were going to run away with it. Salah hits the bar, offside goal, and then Chelsea turned it on. And they started this game, and Sterling was giving Emerson nightmares down that side. He absolutely had him all day down that wing. Jackson kept getting in behind. Chilwell basically still left winger. And how they went in and then came straight back out after the break. I can't believe it was equal at half time. I strongly believe that if Enzo scores that penalty, Chelsea go on to win 3-4-5, because after that, they sat back and there was no more space behind for Jackson to get into. They just sat back and it killed the game a little bit. And I think it killed them a little bit mentally, because the problem that Chelsea have had is they had that mentality from last season where they were on top of games, they were dominating games, but the longer they don't put the ball in the back of the net, the more they start to not believe it's going to happen. And again, that felt like it happened because they were playing lovely football, but they missed far too many chances. And then once they went behind, they sat back. And I felt this in Game Week 1, and I felt this in Game Week 2 as well, that the subs that Pochettino makes have no effect. And I was really surprised that Chilwell came off. And, the chase in the game, and I understand the substitution to bring an attacking player on because Chilwell is like left wing, but he's a defensive player. But I would have still had Chilwell on and just moved him to left back, and I would have put Colwell to centre back or taken Colwell or Thiago Silva off. Taking Chilwell off, maybe he's not quite match fit yet. We don't know. But Mudryk, he came on. I think there's a player in there. I think there's a player in Mudryk somewhere. He's got a natural burst of pace and quick feet, which you can't teach. He gets that end product and he will be fantastic. But as it is right now, he's way off. He's injured now as well for this game week. So he won't even feature. But against West Ham, the subs didn't make any impact. Nkunku being injured has taken away from Jackson as well. But I just think it's going to be interesting if Chelsea perform like they did in the first half against West Ham, because even if Luton drop back, I cannot see Luton keeping this side out. And I think if Chelsea do a good performance and win by 2 or 3 goals, this is when they'll kick on. And I think if people are wildcarding, I have no qualms with going in on triple up. Chilwell, Jackson and Sterling, or if you're really cheap, and I keep saying release the beast, Enzo for 5 million is not the worst choice there. But people will look at stats and they'll look at the scoreline. But if you watch that game of Chelsea against West Ham, you didn't sit there and think Chelsea deserved to lose 3-1. Because they were way on top when they were losing 1-0. They were way on top when it was 1-1. They were arguably on top when it was 2-1. And then West Ham just sat back. And I think West Ham, the teams that have played 2 games, so not including Burnley and Luton, West Ham have like the lowest possession and lowest amount of passes. That just goes to show just how much Chelsea dominated that game. So yeah, I think those were the key points for me. It would definitely just be Chilwell is a fantastic asset to have. Any of the defenders should be okay, but for me, I think Jackson, this is where he's going to shine, and I think Sterling was absolutely incredible against West Ham. And if you are looking for a punt, I think Sterling could be the one. But yeah, that's just my take on that. Tien?
Yeah, so I'm not going to add too much on what these two have said, but yeah, I think you're right. Like you can not ignore the fixtures that are coming for them. So like 2 home game, very easy fixtures with Luton and Forest. You got to take advantage if you can. Now I did also mention on, I think, after the game week 1, where they look really good, especially in the second half against Liverpool, right? Like Chilwell and Jackson, like they're very involved, very attacking. But I did also mention that you got to temper expectations as well at the time. Now, especially after the James injury, like you already saw that there's a big impact. They have to sort of shift the attack from the right. Or somewhat, sort of equally distributed to everything's happening on the left. But Sterling looked really good, and Jackson, as I said, looked really good. So I think it's just a matter of like getting that first goal for Jackson, for example, and even Enzo was not able to score a pen. Like it's got to be the mindset that they still a little bit unsettled, and obviously new manager, a lot of new players, and try to play with each other. And then he got another injury with Chukwuemeka as well. So it's not going to be an easy sort of cruisy journey for Chelsea, because they still got a lot of things to do, a lot of work to do. But you can't get easier features, and then there's the next 2. So yeah, in conclusion, I think I agree with you. Chilwell's got to be number 1. And then I think Jackson is number 2 for me. Beyond that, I think Sterling is definitely worth a watch. I probably wouldn't rush to get him like straight away, but he's certainly someone that I watch very closely. And then number 4 would probably be Enzo Fernandez. because I think he got a lot of potential.
Yeah, I said that they need another creative midfielder, but they don't. They just need to push him forward and set him free. The problem that Chelsea had is West Ham, all they did is they packed the middle and they forced Chelsea to go wide and just do crosses into the box because Chelsea were up there in stat-wise how many crosses they had. And that plays to West Ham's strengths. I mean, they scored off a corner. They're deadly on set pieces, on free kicks and corners, right? So a team like West Ham, they block the middle, they make you play out wide and force you to cross it. That's bread and butter to them. Luton, I can't say the same. It is a known strength for West Ham. They've got big players who are great aerially. I don't see what Luton can force them wide. They can force them down the middle. They can try and force them any way they want. But I still think I can just see this fixture going one way. But as time goes on in the game, it's still 0-0. You will the fans will start to mutter, because I've seen a lot of negativity from Chelsea fans after the West Ham game about, they spent so much money and they're still terrible, blah, blah, blah. But I think genuinely, I've put Chelsea and Spurs as the best two teams I've watched so far this season with the football that they've played at times. And I said I can't wait for those two to play each other because I think it'll be an extremely exciting game. So maybe they've got that negativity bias, or it's still like a hangover from last season. But, the game gets on, the fans start getting angry. They start to think, oh no, it's this situation again. We can't stick the ball in the back of the net. Then, it could become an issue later on. We'll go on to the next matchup, 2 of 3, and it is Spurs against Bournemouth. Maddison potentially out for this one. Bournemouth can feel a bit hard done by from their trip to Anfield with a Szoboszlai Oscar-winning performance in the air as he did his best Black Swan impression as he flew through the sky to take that penalty. So Bournemouth Spurs, Lucian matchup. What are you feeling about these two?
So I made these notes based on the assumption that Madison plays. I hope Madison plays, because if Madison doesn't play, all analysis is off the table, right? Okay, so the tale of Bournemouth versus Spurs revolves around two sides with two new managers implementing brand new philosophies, partly executed well, partly still severely lacking. It all comes down to the talent and the skill sets of their existing personnel. So for Spurs, their whole half-space dominance via the fullbacks, if not James Maddison himself, has been tempered a little bit by the fact that their wingers have absolutely no discipline staying on the flanks. They have to bring the ball in themselves, or they have to be involved centrally. So Angie made changes against Man United. He basically said, okay, wingers, you guys just go in. The centre backs stay back, and the full backs just stay really high up in the first place. They don't even have to wait for opportunities to time their runs in. Whereas for Bournemouth, well, Bournemouth's attack hadn't been so good, but their counter press against Liverpool, whew, it looks so good. The amount of times they dispossessed Trent Alexander-Arnold in the opening 10 minutes looked got their goal set back, and it was just such a shame that they couldn't produce more shots out of that counter press. So looking at this match, we obviously have to look at how Bournemouth will bypass Spurs' plan A, but for FPL purposes, we're more interested in how Spurs will get past Bournemouth's plan A. Because I think some of us would be looking at Spurs defenders, perhaps a couple of cheeky picks that will go into getting us ahead, especially in midfield. Now, for Spurs, in order to beat Bournemouth's press, you basically have to play really well executed one-touch passing. That happened on the right flank for Liverpool with Szoboszlai, Trent, and Salah all combining on the right side. Of course, this benefited Luis Diaz, but at least the mechanisms were there. Now, the question is for you guys to figure out really and to speculate is who would do this for Spurs? And as a result, who would benefit as a result of that one-touch passing into the final third? Because if you look at how Bournemouth, right, fell foul to that Oscar-winning performance by Szoboszlai, against West Ham, they just fell foul to set pieces, which is basically West Ham's strength. So tactically, they did not have any flaws. They were just beaten by a better side executing a better strategy. So My pick would be to go with the most informed player after Madison, Dejan Kulusevski, but I don't think anyone's that interested just yet. But I'd love to hear what you guys think about how they would bypass Bournemouth's famous counter press as of now.
Yeah, so going into Spurs, the way that they're going to get past it is through that midfield. Their midfield, I think, was absolutely fantastic against Manchester United. And again, it further exposed Manchester United's issue in their midfield. Spurs didn't start brighter than United, but they grew into the game. And I think the game was dominated by Maddison, Basuma, and Sarr. I actually had Basuma down as my man of the match. Sarr was fantastic. You know, Spurs as a whole played really, really well. But I felt like in both the defensive responsibility and how he was fluid in attack, I thought Basuma was absolutely fantastic. You're right in the fact that the Maddison problem. So we're looking at Spurs because this is where the fixtures turn, and this is where people are sort of penciled in a Maddison, Richarlison, Kulusevski, Udogi, maybe even Vicario, the goalkeeper. This is where we sort of penciled in, hey, let's look at Spurs, right? FPL wise, you're not really going to look at Basuma, but Sarr is 4.5 million. He's got a run in the team. Udogi's 4.5 million. They've got a good run of fixtures now. So if you're on a wild card, these are definitely players that you would be potentially taking a look at. Basuma had the most tackles against United with 7. So that just shows that midfield engine. So if they're going to get past this Bournemouth side, it's going to be a lot of Premier League matches like this, but it's going to be the battle of the midfield press. And the good thing that Spurs have got is Basuma and Sarr are just like non-stop. In terms of creativity, Son, Sarr, and Maddison, most successful passes in the opponent's final third. Maddison with the most crosses with 8. Which is important to note that big chances mostly fell Man United's way because Shaw and Bruno were leading those charts. So the problem you're going to have with Spurs is I would still only look at them in terms of attack because defensively, I still see them conceding goals. But in terms of Bournemouth and the counter, I will just caveat what you were saying, Lucian, about how good they were on the break. And I pinpointed I think it was when they were winning 1-0 and they hit a counter and Solanke was through. And Van Dijk did one of the most weakest, feeblest attempts of a tackle I've seen him ever do. And it was like when he was playing for the Netherlands, and I think it's when an Italian player went past him. I had some Liverpool fans telling me the problem with Klopp is he's arguably too loyal to some players, and we're going to start having to look at Van Dijk, I think, in a little bit of a different light, because I feel as though when we come on to Liverpool and Newcastle, I feel as though that is going to be a weakness. But sticking with Spurs for now, creativity, it's all going to come through Maddison. So if I was on a wild card, I would for sure be looking at him. Unfortunately, there's no solid news yet on whether or not he is going to be fit for the game. And I would still look at the goalkeeper. Again, if I was on a wild card, I wouldn't be itching to bring him in, but he's I'm going to say Ederson-esque, and I don't mean in terms of his ability. I mean in terms of he's a goalkeeper that plays on the ball. So if they're going to get like Onana, right? He's a goalkeeper that's going to get a lot of time, a lot of touches on the ball. So if he does keep a clean sheet, there's a high chance that he's going to get some bonus points in there. He had one of like the best passing success rates of the weekend. I didn't personally think he looked good. He looked bad against Barcelona, and he was a bit unsure against Brentford, but I think he had a really good game against Manchester United. But you can also argue that Spurs should have conceded at least 2 goals still because Bruno missed from 6 yards with his head and Rashford missed the Rabona, right? So the thing that is going to happen is I do see goals in this game. I see Spurs are going to win, but I still wouldn't be looking at their defense really because 1, I don't think they're all 100% nailed, and 2, the style that Spurs play, I've already said, Spurs and Chelsea are the best teams I've seen so far, the most entertaining I've seen because of how they play the game and how they press and how they all get forward in numbers. The one thing I would like to see from the Spurs side is to give Son a chance down the middle. I feel a little bit harsh done by Richarlison. I don't think he's particularly done a lot wrong, but he's not even though Madison's creating all these chances, it doesn't feel like the fall into Richarlison. And if he does get more involved, he mentioned himself that he's growing his link right now. It was on Instagram or Twitter or wherever it was. He said, every week he's getting closer. He's getting a better understanding with the players around him. But the problem is the understanding's not there yet. So if there was a player I was going to go to, it would be Maddison. The battle's going to be in midfield. Bournemouth can count themselves unlucky because they could have been ahead and then they find themselves sort of 2 down in quick succession. Quick thinking from Diaz when he scored his goal, the dive from Soberslide for the penalty. The weird thing that happened with Bournemouth, though, is when they are supposed to take hold of a game, because they're used to sitting back and countering and pressing and countering, when actually Liverpool went down to 10 men, they were better. Bournemouth did not take... When it was like, okay, Bournemouth, you need to take the game now because we're down to 10 men. Go on, you take the lead, you have the ball. Kind of felt like they didn't know what to do with it. And Liverpool grew into the game when they actually went down to 10 men. So I still feel as though it doesn't matter what game plan Bournemouth implement, they still don't necessarily have the quality to do it. And that quality, they had 3 to 4 chances in the Liverpool box in the last 10 minutes. And their biggest chance was stopped by their own player. It was Billing and I think Traore in the box. It dropped to them and they both kicked at each other. And
actually, their biggest chance fell for Billing and Kluivert's shot was saved.
Was it Kluivert? I knew it was one of the wingers. I just couldn't see which one it was.
Yeah, it was definitely Kluivert on the left wing, but he drifted over centrally. So
is that the one when they got in
Traore's
each other's
chance,
way?
yeah. That one was Billing.
Yeah, that was Billing's chance, right? I would like to see Son down the middle. They still don't have a necessarily out-and-out striker. I see goals in it, but I still think it's going to be Spurs. But it all comes down to Maddison. If Maddison's not there, I don't... Lo Celso can step in. He was playing quite good in pre-season. A lot of Spurs fans are not too fussed about seeing him in the 11. But in terms of FPL, I think it's all about Maddison, and I would still avoid the Spurs defense because I think they were lucky to get a clean sheet against Manchester United. Tien, Spurs, Bournemouth?
Yeah, no, I think it just, once again, yeah, as you said, Maddison is just so central to the Spurs attack. So if he's out, then, whatever you've said in the last 10 minutes, it's not going to matter anymore. Yeah, I mean, if he was fit, I would have been very tempted to make that move from Salah and then upgrade my forward. So yeah, it's all boiled down to that. Like, I'm not at all convinced about Richarlison. So he looked very lost. He's only had 2 lows XG attempts in the last 2 weeks. XGI of only 0.19. So I just don't think he's an FPL option yet. As you said, he's learning. Maybe he will learn, but because the fixtures for Spurs are kind of now, in the next 3 weeks, they've got pretty good fixtures. So if he's not an option now, then we might have to wait, and then we'll see how he can learn in the future. And as for defenders, I think you're right. I think Bournemouth will score. Probably take advantage of one of the mistakes that they make, sort of playing out of the back. So I think in conclusion, probably not going to look at any Bournemouth asset to start with. And as for Spurs, unless we get confirmation that Maddison is fit and ready, I think it's the no buy, no sell for any of the Spurs asset you've got. I know a lot of people have already got Maddison. I think he's a hold. Some people have Richarlison already, trying to get ahead of the curve, and that's a danger. Sometimes you get ahead of the curve and there may be no curve. But I think it's probably a hold as well. And then obviously if you've got any defensive asset like, Doggy or someone, I think you hold as well for the good fixture. So basically no buy, no sell.
Yeah, we're still waiting a little bit. It's still a little bit early in the season. And we'll go on to the one that should be a blockbuster in terms of football. Big teams battling out, should be fighting towards the Champions League places, these two. It is Newcastle and Liverpool. Tian, take it away with the matchup. Sorry, Lucian, take it away with the matchup.
Yes, it's going to be a blockbuster because Newcastle's attacking strength plays right into Liverpool's weaknesses. And at the same time, Liverpool's weaknesses, well, they are probably going to punch through Newcastle's weaker left side anyway. So I think the question comes down to which narrative you guys believe is the stronger one, whether Newcastle can overcome Liverpool or will Liverpool overcome Newcastle, because neither team have conflicting strategies. It's all about the new dimension that they've created themselves, as mentioned earlier. And I did mention Liverpool's triangle already. Comes down to whether they do well against Newcastle's left side. That remains to be seen. But we need to talk about Newcastle more because, as Bournemouth did against Liverpool, Newcastle do it so much better. So much better. We saw it against Villa. Joel Linton from midfield can press all the way up to Matty Cash at right back. And they did so against Man City pretty well. In fact, they actually managed to get behind Jack Grealish a couple of times. Miguel Almiron was the best player there. So it just comes down to whether Newcastle do the same thing against Liverpool, either dispossessing Trent Alexander-Arnold in the center or just attacking the space behind whatever right back or left back that Liverpool play. In this particular case, I think the focus will be on Sandro Tonali's job, hitting Liverpool, catching them cold. And for Liverpool, as I think in the same zone itself, Soboslai. Yeah, let's see whether he comes up with a repeat performance against Newcastle here, because I think they're playing at St. James's, right? That's going to be a little bit more difficult to do. But yeah, I think we should just focus on which side will execute their attack much, much better. Let's take it away.
Yeah, Newcastle really disappointed me against Man City, who themselves have some first team players out. And they had to play in the Super Cup final as well. So I thought the Man City game was a real test to show if Newcastle were actually going to be serious title challengers. But they had one shot on target from Harvey Barnes for about 25 yards out. And it was fair and convincing. We said earlier about Man City's not having to go 100% to win games, and I think that was it against Newcastle, which was a surprise. But Liverpool are certainly not Man City levels right now, and at home Newcastle are formidable. The key battle, though, for this is going to be the midfield, and that's not just centrally, but like you say about it being on the wings, where Newcastle should dominate, because Liverpool is so easy to slice open, especially through the middle, because they still don't have a six. They still don't have a defensive midfielder that's come in to replace Fabinho. I know that they've signed it's Endo, right? From the Bundesliga. He looks
was pretty good.
Yeah, but
it was pretty good.
I had this conversation with Liverpool fans who were backing it. You know, Klopp says he's a good player. Well, of course he's going to say he's a good player. He's just signed him. He's not going to be like, oh, he's bang average, this fella. And also, if he was that good, why is he signing him now? Why is he not signing him years ago? He's like 30, and he's only been in a European top league in the last 3 years. So you're not even signing an experienced top-level player because he's only been at the top level for the last 3 years. He looks lightweight, and he's not going to be he could be a great squad player, but if they're going to start him against Newcastle, he's not going to make them a much better side than what they are now. So Newcastle against Villa looked absolutely devastating on the attack. I think they were a little bit too respectful of Man City in game week 2. Liverpool had their best 30 minutes in the first 30 minutes of the entire season. And then they had the second best spell when Bournemouth were down to 10 men. If Newcastle's midfield control the game, I only see Newcastle winning this game, especially if Liverpool go to Tyneside with that 3 at the back system, the one that pushes Trent into midfield. Because, like you said about Joe Linton chasing all the way to the back, if it's even short, if they've only got 3 at the back, Van Dijk isn't the player that he was before his injury. And if Trent is in the midfield and he's getting pressed by, Tonali, Joelinton, and Bruno Guimaraes, then I think they're going to maul them. They're going to absolutely maul them. But they're going to get them down the wings, because that's where I think Newcastle have arguably their biggest strength in terms of attack. And whoever starts the game as a winger, if they don't get the job done, the subs will. So if you're getting to 60, 65 minutes and the legs are getting tired and they're still pushing down the wings and they're still on the attack, Newcastle now have that squad depth where they can bring on Harvey Barnes or Gordon or push Isaac out to the wide and put Callum Wilson down the middle. I just think midfield is where the battle's going to be, but down the wings, if Liverpool go and they still set up with that 3 pushing Trent into that defensive midfield position and leave the sides vulnerable, Newcastle's going to rip them apart. But even if they go there and they set up as a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, they'll get hit down the middle because they still don't have a 6. I don't see this going. Like, in that first game against Chelsea, we know that they have a problem about putting the ball in the back of the net, and Chelsea were dominating them for most of the game. Against Bournemouth, every time Bournemouth went forward, I thought they were going to score. And you said it yourself, Bournemouth and Newcastle have similar plan, but a much better squad of quality of squad and depth. So they're not going to have the situation where Billing's there to take the ball off Cliver or Traore or whoever. It's going to be trying to stop Isaac, trying to stop Wilson when he comes on, trying to stop Barnes, trying to stop Tonali getting in late into the box, trying to stop Bruno Guimaraes making his box-to-box runs, trying to stop Joe Linton making his... You can say that about any Newcastle midfielder, right? Trying to run into the box late. Who's going to stop them? Who are you looking at in that Liverpool side? Now, defensively, Newcastle play the same 5 players: Pope, Trippier, Burn, Botman, Shah. They play the same 5 defenders. They know each other's, what they have for breakfast. They know what they're going to, what song they listen to when they're geeing up for a game. They know everything about each other. They're used to each other. They're so good defensively at home as well. Liverpool could go and get goals. I'm not going to say that they're not, but this is not going to be a clean sheet for Liverpool. I can't see it because they've got no one. There's no one in that Liverpool side that makes me think they can stop Newcastle. And it doesn't matter what formation they go in. But if they go with that Trent in midfield, 3 at the back formation, Newcastle's going to rip them apart on the wings. Because who's going to stop them? I don't want to put Salah down because I know you guys have still got him. But if they're going to do that with Trent centrally, Salah's going to have to track back. And he's not going to be where you want him to be. He's going to have to do his defensive duty because he will be the wide player for that side. Because he's right wing. And if there's no Trent at right back, he's going to have to drop deeper and he's going to be on the wing. And it's another reason why I didn't have Salah in my side. Because someone's got to do some legwork for Liverpool. Someone's going to have to win the ball, and I've got no idea. Szoboszlai was good, but again, Bournemouth is not... I'm not dissing Bournemouth, but it's not a difficult fixture on paper, right? Chelsea is still figuring themselves out in the first game, and they were dominated. Liverpool were dominated by Chelsea. So they were disappointed against Man City. Maybe too much respect going there. They were poor in offence. It was a typical City just passing it around the back, holding onto the ball. This will be the one I think that really lets us know that I don't think Liverpool are going to be a top 4 team.
Would you like to make a prediction on the Newcastle Liverpool game?
I'm going to say 3-1. I think Liverpool always are going to have the chance to score. Always. But as I'm looking at the Premier League right now, Liverpool are only going to get in the top 4 because other teams don't get the results. Not because they're a good team at the minute. Because there's something wrong. There's something off. And I know people will say the last 10 games, the last season, Liverpool were really good. But then I always counter that in those last 10 games, they played the 5 worst teams in the Premier League, the bottom 5. There was no big game in that last 10. And people aren't playing for anything. You play in safe mid-table Crystal Palace, the last game of the season or whatever they're playing. Then no one's trying 100%. There's nothing on the line. I don't see... Liverpool, they need a 6. It's that simple. They got beat to Caicedo, they got beat to Lavia, both by Chelsea. But if they don't get a good player in that position, they're going to get mauled by the top teams. They're going to get mauled in Europe. And I can't see it any other way. They'll probably score goals, but they'll lose 3-2, 4-1, things like that. So in terms of Liverpool, sign a 6. And don't go to Tyneside and think you can play 3 at the back because you can't do that against Newcastle. Tien, final thoughts, Newcastle, Liverpool?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. There's going to be a lot of goals in this game. It's probably Newcastle probably going to score 3-4 goals even. And yeah, whether Liverpool can try to score, match them or score more, that's what's going to make how this game going to turn out is how Liverpool set up their gameplay and to try to score more than Newcastle, because as he said, they can't stop Newcastle from scoring. I can't see that happening. And just a quick shout out to the Net That Whole guide as well. Like they got the fixture difficulty rating. I think the attack FDR rating for Newcastle is off the chart. It's off the chart. So yeah, I think every metric is pointing to a lot of goals for them. But then it's a shame that I don't think anyone is looking to buy any Newcastle attacking asset this week.
Just
If
too many
if I
options
could,
elsewhere.
that's it. Like if I could, on like Isak for example, I would love to have him for this game week, but I can't, and I don't think anyone can. A lot of people, some of them might, some people might have already had a punt on Isak. Well, good on them, because I think they're gonna face this game week, and they're gonna get all the points for themselves because no one gonna get there. And the same for Liverpool. Like if anything, people were trying to get off Liverpool. I mean Salah, Salah, right? He's got the capability of scoring against anyone. So I'm not gonna just discount him straight away. But yeah, it's probably safe to say that this is gonna be the game to watch for this game week. Then with very, very, very little FPL interest, which is very, very bizarre.
Yeah, because with
320,000 managers brought Isak in. We
Yeah.
should be hiding behind a couch.
yeah,
It's
it's
for this
with
game week.
yeah. think-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, because they did start buying him in game week 2 as well.
And it's the sales are
Yeah.
going up, and I've not seen any content creator talk about it. Is like it's all just been
No.
Jackson Visa, but you got to look at it as a set, right? So yeah, it's good fixture this week, but last week was City. Next week is Brighton. The week after that's Brentford. So yeah, Newcastle can go. People brought him in before Man City. Isaac did nothing. Yeah, he could do something against Liverpool, but then he's got Brighton and Brentford in the next two after that. It's not the easiest of fixtures. So still, I'm fine with not having Newcastle for now, but I think a lot of us are penciling them in from game week 7 because that's when they have Burnley, West Ham, Palace, and Wolves as a run of fixtures. But it's just even though it's one great fixture, other teams have great fixtures too. Jackson's got Luton, and I know we're digging at Liverpool a little bit here, but I'd rather have my striker at home to Luton than at home to Liverpool. But yeah, all
No,
right.
you're right. I would still pick Jackson and Alvarez before I think about Isak.
And because
So
Sheffield
that-
United, you've all got Haaland. Most
There.
people are playing like 3-5-2, but even if you're on a 3-4-3, you're looking at even Watkins has got Burnley, right? So it's just not the. And then you're looking not this week. You're also looking at game week 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And over those fixtures, Chelsea, Brentford, Man City, they all have better fixtures than Newcastle. So it's easy to see why, but as a spectator of football, this should be a great game because look, before the season started, we had Newcastle and Villa pretty similar, not too far away, and Newcastle smashed them 5-1. Don't look at Liverpool like they were when they won the title. There's nothing stopping this game from being 5-1 because I would argue that Aston Villa have a better setup than Liverpool right now. Across the field, we're not talking about individual talent like Mo Salah. We're talking about as a team playing as a unit. I would argue that Aston Villa are a stronger team right now, Liverpool, because they're relying on something individual. All right, so let's go into the 4-week player picks to finish off with. We'll chuck the captaincy in there because we can't go on for too much longer. We're all just saying Haaland for the captain this week. You could argue an Arsenal player if you were feeling a bit spicy because Fulham are bottom in terms of expected goals conceded, right? Well, top if you're looking at it upside down. But Haaland, captain pick, obvious. Maybe an Arsenal player if you're feeling spicy.
Haaland, Sheffield
Haaland.
United.
Yep.
Enough said.
So this week, Tien, you are on defenders. I'm very happy with the one that you've picked. Last week, people picked like 2 of the 3 players I had. This week, we're starting with another player I have. Thank you very much. Tien, you are the defender. This guy for 4 weeks. Who are you going for?
Yeah, so for me, any defender picks have to satisfy two main criteria. One, they guarantee to play for a really strong side defensively, and two, they having a great run of fixture. So if there is any additional attacking threat, then it becomes a no-brainer, right? So obviously Chilwell ticks all the above criteria. So he will be the obvious pick for this week. But obviously because Ryan already picked him last week, I'm not gonna go there. Instead, I'm going to Manchester City, Ruben Diaz. So, so obviously, the fixtures in the next 4 game weeks, you've got Sheffield United, Fulham, West Ham, and Nottingham Forest, which I think they could potentially give 4 clean sheets out of 4. I think a lot of people won't be arguing about that, but you would be very disappointed if they get less than 3 clean sheets in the next 4. So, clean sheets is bread and butter for defenders. And I think because Man City, especially with Stones still being injured, there isn't any defender that is nailed and offers great attacking potential. So I think I'm just going for the one that is likely to get the most minutes, which is Diaz. And actually, Diaz is among the best City defender in terms of uh, minutes per baseline BPS as well last season, and in the one game that he started last game week as well, where he actually got 1 bonus point. So yeah, if he's giving clean sheet and if it's a low scoring game, then he's probably potentially likely in the bonus as well. So yeah, that's me.
Right. Music to my ears because I brought him in for Gabriel this week. So Ryan's not here today, football chat box, but he has gone also for Man City. He's gone for Phil Foden. We've talked a lot about him today, but he said Foden has looked great in the last 2 games. He has started for City in the league. His 9 chances created in 2 games is only matched by Matoma from all midfielders. His next 5 fixtures are some of the best for midfielders, out of which 2 of them are Fulham and Wolves, who are the bottom 2 teams for XG conceded non-penalty. My forward pick, and it's a man that I've backed since game week 1. He's been in my side. Lucian chose him last week as his forward, and I can't look past him. It is Jackson at Chelsea. Luton, Forest, Bournemouth, and Aston Villa next 4. But where else can I go? That's the state of the game right now. I could have sat here and said Haaland. What's the point? 91% of people own him. I could have said Alvarez. Tien chose him last week. Not going to Haaland. Arsenal have no forwards in FPL because Jesus is injured. Spurs have no forward. Richarlison's a midfielder. Man United has no forward that is fit. You've got Martial and Højlund. Højlund's not fit yet. Martial, not a chance. So where do I go? I could have said Visa, but he's picked somewhere else. But I don't believe him to be the top scoring forward over the next 4 weeks, which leaves me with Watkins. Watkins has got slightly more difficult fixtures. So I'm backing the guy I've had since the start of the season. I think once he gets 1 goal, he's going to keep on scoring, and that's all I'm going to say about Jackson. So Lucian can choose any position, any player he wants, because he's the wild card for this week. For the next 4 game weeks, who are you looking at, Lucian?
Well, I mean, so many teams have 3 home games out of 4 over the next few. And that's why we're all interested in Chelsea, right? So only one other team has 3 home games against 4 against bottom half opposition all the way. That would be Brentford. So I could have sat at home, twiddled my thumbs over penalties, and picked Mbomo here. But I've gone for the number 9, Yohan Wissa. While he plays the number 9 position, he has looked absolutely amazing. I mean, he's known to be that good for a while now, and I'm just glad to see him deliver on his potential. What I feel is a bit off about Mbomo here is that not only he's been delivering from his penalties, he's also been forced to push out wide to set up Wisa for a lot of their chances. Especially if you watch them against Fulham, right? It's basically Mbomo pulling wide, setting up Wisa, pulling wide, setting up Wisa. And even Mbomo's big chance at the very end where he scored was basically an anomaly because Rico Henry at left back was shifted to the right for the last few minutes because of an injury to Joshua De Silva. And that set Christopher Ayer up, which set Mbomo at the back post. So, I mean, yeah, I trust a more consistent process. And even though Wisa is likely to get subbed off early, I think across 4 game weeks at home against Crystal Palace, Bournemouth, and I forgot what that third team is. Yeah, I'd back him pretty much on par with Jackson because, I picked Jackson last week. And yeah, I'm just hoping to see Wisa do as well as Jackson. Win-win.
Yeah, you got both.
Everton is the other game.
Oh, Everton, yeah. So your forwards are Wisa and Haaland and Jackson, Lucian, right?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
That's a great front line.
I'm jealous.
Yeah. Well, you got Foden. We don't have Foden, right? So
That
you'll
is true.
always have Phil.
I had to turn Rashford into Foden in order to fund your Pedro to Wisa.
But that's not a bad compromise, is it? Sheffield United away.
Be on -8, right?
Yeah, but the
Or
third one
less.
was the third one was a rage sell of Kai Havertz. That one had no choice. Yeah,
Oh, so you took
had to,
you took the -8.
no choice. That one Kai to Mitoma was compulsory. It was just to rectify an error. That one had to be done because it's better than sitting on Kai Havertz week after week.
Oh yeah.
But I think your team is a million times stronger.
Yeah,
now
a -8 can be
last
paid
game
off in
week.
1 week at this rate. Phil Foden gets 2 goals and
that's true.
assists. You're laughing all the
And
way.
I think I think that's it, right? You've chosen certain picks in game week 1 for for certain reasons, and some of them didn't turn out the way you wanted to be, and I think you quickly rectify them, and I think that's the aggressive play that you might have to go.
Well, we said you can plan all preseason. Game week 1 starts. Everyone has a plan till you punched in the face. You chose the players. It didn't work out. You've taken the early hit now. Kept your wild card. 8 points you can make up easily. Problem
But
solved.
Rob, depends on what your plan is. If your plan is you got a good shield in front of your face, then it's a lot less likely that you get punched in the face.
Yeah. All right, I should have had a Stupinan. I know, I get it. I've got steel. Look, blame Gabriel. If I knew Gabriel earlier, it would have been a Stupinan, and I would have potentially had Leno. No, I wouldn't have had Leno. I'd have had Pickford, but whatever. Anyway, thanks for joining, guys. Hopefully, game week 3 is going to be good to you. Hopefully, it's a lot better than it was in game week 2. It was horrible for me. Even my bench blanked. Horrible. This is the week Etse comes good, guys. This is it. He's down to 6.4 million now. It's time for him to step up to the likes of Umwemo levels of returns in my dreams, but we'll see. But thanks for joining us. We'll be back this time next week. As always, have a good one.